Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Veronica Alexander and I'm one of the unit coordinators at Swinburne Online, and I am excited to present this second video for you about the virtual classroom, as we're calling it. The first video we kind of looked at this new educational landscape that we find ourselves in, and now we're going to look at some really practical tips and ideas about how we can transform our practice. So hopefully these are things that will really help you now, and we're looking at free tools. I picked out things that were going to be really easy and purposeful and meaningful for you. So hopefully they're going to really help you now in this new kind of environment where we're working at a distance from our lovely students. But what I'm really hoping for is that it's going to transform practice when we return back to the classroom. So once we see how we can differentiate and we can create this wonderful inclusive environment and we can achieve so much with the help of technology, I hope that that continues as we come back to our bricks and mortar classrooms. So we're looking today at first understanding the context. So we're going to have a look a little bit about some considerations that we have to make. Then we're going to look at what's called the SAM-R model, which is really a framework for understanding what technology does for us. So how deeply it's, transforming what it is that we're doing in the learning space. And then I'm just going to walk you through some tools for online teaching. So if you don't have a cup of tea, get one now, because it's going to be a nice journey that I hope you can enjoy with me today. Okay, so I guess before we go out and pick tools, we really need to have a bit of a think about our context. So we need to understand that, like it or not, there is a digital divide, and what that looks like can be varied. So it might be the number of devices available in the home environment currently. So we have to think about, the people that are working at home, whether they need the device, what kind of devices do they have, and we have to look at, how creative we need to be there in terms of how we're delivering the learning and the assessments. We can't assume that everyone just has a laptop, and a really good laptop, and they're ready to roll. So there has to be a consideration. Luckily we have the internet, which does provide us the access to people's phones, and children can record things on phones. So we kind of need to think that it's not going to be just this stock standard delivery. It needs to be something that allows people some flexibility, because currently people are in a very stressful situation, and people are not a lot of parents and carers are not teachers, and they're trying their best. So we need to make it as easy as possible. So we need to think about, are we going to print worksheets and send them, or are we going to ask for printing to occur at home? That's not something that can be assumed, because not everyone has printers at home. They don't have the need for it. And obviously then we don't want to be sending them out to printing places, which many of them will currently be shut at the moment anyway. We need to think about some free, things like Free TV, for example, has got lots of great extra programming now in response to the COVID-19 crisis. So I know that just yesterday ABC Education released, they did a media release saying that from, I think, next week, they're going to be extending their programming from 10 till 3. It's purely dedicated to school children. So in the morning, they're going to have primary school programs, and in the afternoon, they have programs more suited to high school students. So, if you can look at the programming, and even more broadly, not just ABC, if you can look at, what's on different channels, and if you can somehow integrate that as a reading activity or some kind of, as part of your unit of work, that's a really great and engaging thing for the kids to be doing. I mean, in a way, they're not even going to realize that they're learning. So that is going to be more motivating for them as well. And there's fantastic online streaming at the moment. So I know a lot of the different zoos, particularly Taronga's got some great stuff at the moment. So that's all online, so you can watch it on phones, laptops. So it's really worth having a look at all of the live streaming that's going on at the moment as well. And there's some recorded pieces there. So, there's lots of free resources available. A lot of companies and providers are really coming out to support our school children and our teachers. So it's worth spending a bit of time having a look at what's out there, because in this context, we kind of need to look out of our current program, or the program that we had hoped to implement in term 2 is going to look very different. It has to look different, and we need to kind of look at what's out there and how can we ensure that the students are going to be motivated and engaged. And I guess the other really important thing to consider is how we're going to maintain the relationship and how we're going to stay in touch. It's not realistic to think that you can have your students on Zoom for a traditional school day. If there's more than one child in the house, that's obviously going to be an issue. But even just in terms of having children sitting in front of devices for that long. So, having a Zoom meeting with your class is great. Our preference, we've been talking about it, would be to use that as a check-in, kind of report back session, as opposed to hoping that they're going to be really great explicit teaching sessions, because that they don't necessarily work very well that way. So it might be to have a couple of meetings a week, or even one where you just check in with your class, they can report back. That can be, part of your kind of news presentations where they get to talk about what's happening, or you need to preempt and set a very clear task for that session. So the other thing to consider is, how you're going to stay in touch with the parents and carers, because we're going to need constant communication with them and support. We can't leave it up to the children. So, we're going to be doing phone calls, emails. You're going to set up some kind of group, maybe on Facebook, like a private group, whatever suits your context and whatever you're comfortable with. But we need to have a really strong consideration for the partnership now that we're in with the home environment, and we need to support them because there's a lot of anxiety out there with the parents. Another really important thing to consider is consent and netiquette. So obviously with a lot of the tools that we're now going to be using, they're public tools, and we need to ensure that we've got the consent of the home for the students to be using them, particularly in the case of where we're asking the students to post something. So if you want students to do video recordings and you don't have an LMS like Seesaw or something like that, then, you may be looking into different options like YouTube, for example. So we can't assume that we've got consent to do that, and that's something that needs to be considered. And then we need to really carefully make sure that we're instructing everyone on safety around that and how you set your settings so you're not public and things like that. Obviously, having an LMS and something like Google Classroom would be really helpful with that. Now, netiquette is something that is really important, but also a really wonderful learning opportunity for the children. So this is something we should be doing in the classroom explicitly anyway, but now it's going to be more important than ever. It's a certain way that we should be writing and behaving in an online environment, and children don't know that. We can't assume that they know that. So we need to show them. And I'll just give you a little example. In a traditional classroom environment where we were using Seesaw a lot, and I wanted to open up everyone's work to everyone in the class, and I wanted children to comment and provide feedback because we were creating this really kind of learning space. We're like a family learning together, and they were only year 2. And so initially I just kind of let them go to see what would happen. And I did have to approve all the comments. So as the comments would come through, I'd have these there was nothing rude. So they were, there was the odd poop emoji, let's be honest. But we nibbed that in the bud very quickly. But there was a lot of just like 10 exclamation points and then 20 smiley faces, or all these different emojis for comments, or capital letters and people yelling at each other. They didn't realize they were yelling. So I one day pulled it up I did a screencast up to the whiteboard, and I just said, look, these are all the comments that are coming through, and I explained to them why each comment was not going to be approved or which comment would be approved. And I said to them, this is our learning space. This is not a place where we're just going to be silly. If you're going to make a comment, think about the comment that you're making. Write it with purpose. Make sure it's kind. Don't use caps because that's yelling. We don't use 10 exclamation points. So it became this kind of inadvertent lesson about purpose of writing, thinking about your audience, using punctuation appropriately, and it really worked. The children then were very good at kind of self-assessing, is this an appropriate comment or not? And eventually I could turn off the approvals, me needing to make the approvals, because the children demonstrated that they were really responsible in the comments that they were making. So, right through, we need to be helping the children with that. It seems harmless if they're writing things like, yeah, in a Google Classroom chat box with, a million exclamation marks, but it's not purposeful writing. And as the teachers in the classroom, we need to be leading by example and explicitly saying to them what's appropriate and what's not. So I think that that's something that we should really consider. And these are really important life skills as well. I'll just tell you one thing at Swinburne Online that we do really, really well, and I think I would just love for every workplace to take this on board. Because we work in an online environment and we have a really acute understanding that we are physically distanced and in a way emotionally distanced from the people we're communicating with, even our colleagues who we know quite well, through video meetings. I have never received a curt email from anyone in the 6 years that I've been with Swinburne Online. There is a culture of writing with such empathy to the other person. It's almost something that I call like preemptive empathy. You write something always with politeness, always with consideration of how are you going, because you don't know what's at the other end. So this is a really great opportunity to actually teach children that when we write an email or when we make a post, we really think about the other person that might be receiving that email. And in a way, we do a lot of netiquette work at school already, but now they're actually living it. Now they're actually physically removed and they're having to use these tools for real. So what a great opportunity to really have these conversations and do some videos and talk about it and bring the parents and carers into the fold as well. Something to consider is the social space. Our children now don't have their mates every day. So how can we support them to still develop those relationships? Do we create a special space for them in our learning management system to do that, where they can have a little bit more freedom with how they interact? So that needs to be really considered as well at a school level, because eventually they're going to come back and we want them to come back with some strong relationships. Okay, so moving on to the SAM-R model. This is attributed to Dr. Ruben Fuentedura, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's a fantastic framework for understanding how we're using technology, essentially. So are we just down here and just doing basically what we could have done on paper or traditionally, but now we're just using technology? So are we giving a child an iPad to write and do some typing with no other purpose behind that? Or could we have just done that on paper? So that's just substitution, which is not a bad thing, but it's just a consideration that you're not necessarily doing anything extra or special or benefiting the learning process. Some would say that for young children, you're actually doing the writing a disservice if you're doing that substitution. So that's a consideration for, why are you actually using this tool? Why are you using this device? What are you doing with it? Are you just substituting something that you were already doing? In that case, well, what's the real purpose to it? Could you just be doing what you were already doing? Or are you starting to move up the scale? Are you starting to improve certain elements? So for example, something like I had a child who had significant issues with his handwriting, had real gross motor issues, fine motor issues, and was working with an OT, but was an amazing writer. And so for him, I had to replace, in some situations, not all, because we still wanted him handwriting, but when the focus was on him getting his ideas out, that iPad, typing was no issue for him. So that was really a modification for him, because he wouldn't be able to perform and show me his fabulous ideas if I gave him a pen and a piece of paper, because he had so many hurdles to overcome. So in that situation, it's not the most amazing design change. I'm not doing anything revolutionary, but what I'm doing is allowing that child to show their creativity with the use of technology. Okay, so then there would be other things like, you know, I know that some EALD students have got these amazing pens that translate text for them as they roll over them. You know, that's not possible without the technology. So that's something that allows inclusion in a way that we could never do before. So you can, if you think about the tools and devices that you're using, you start to see, wow, well, this I could have never done before. And this is, oh, well, that's just a replacement. So it's quite interesting when you sit back and we kind of bundle technology into one big basket, but the way we interact with it is very different according to this scale. So what we're really interested in here, we're not saying that substitution augmentation is a bad thing. It's just we don't want to get stuck there. What we're really interested in is how are we transforming practice? How are we making things possible that weren't possible before? So what I'm really passionate about is differentiation and using technology to do that. And really, technology allows us to differentiate in a way that we never could before. So we can literally clone ourselves as teachers and create a video instruction for one group and a video instruction for another group. Not humanly possible without the use of technology. We have inclusivity and access, you know, like the examples I use. That child that couldn't physically write, he couldn't access that learning. He couldn't be included and couldn't demonstrate his amazing narratives that he had in his head without the use of technology. You know, technology really allows us to think about how we're teaching, which is what really excites me and why I wanted to do this video for you. Because once we start to use technology and start to plan to use it, you know, we're really good as teachers to kind of, we get up and we can wing it. You know, I used to always say to young grad teachers, you know, did you pass winging it 101? Because it's such a variable environment where so much is on the go. But when you have to plan using technology, particularly now when you're not physically with them and you can't wing it, you really have to think, what do I want them to learn? How am I going to get them there? How am I going to do my modeling? How am I going to do my explicit instruction? So, you know, and what tools are going to allow me to do that? So we're not necessarily just redefining the actual learning experience for the children, but we're redefining our own practice. And what technology allows us to do is to reflect and to think. And for me, that's really exciting. I mean, even just recording videos of yourself and then having to watch it back and go, oh, okay, maybe I did talk for too long. So that's a really great opportunity, I think. And I think it's something that we should be embracing. And feedback and assessment. Again, like I said, with the cloning yourselves, you can't give the same quality feedback in a live environment as you can if you can record your voice or you can record a video around a piece of writing and show the child how you would analyze it. So technology really does allow us to provide feedback in different ways. So some of the tools I'll show you have opportunities to build in feedback in little quizzes and for you to include feedback in a video from YouTube, for example. So there's some really cool ways that we can do that. And we're going to look as well at assessment, about how it really kind of allows us to do assessment differently and in a differentiated way. Okay, so now let's go to the fun part, the tools. So video recordings. I'm just going to put myself down here with Eddie Wu. So I included Eddie in here because what he did on the surface was not anything spectacular. It was just recording his lessons. But what he redefined was the idea of inclusion. The fact that anyone at any time can be involved in his lesson. And that child who was in hospital, who didn't have the opportunity to participate, who could have just been given worksheets and tried to work it out for himself, now could have an authentic learning experience. And that's in essence the place that we find ourselves in right now, and why I'm really passionate about teachers getting on board and recording explicit teaching and model teaching and guided teaching, doing little videos for their students, because there is nothing that can replace the voice and the passion and the excitement of your teacher. No worksheet's going to replace that. And we have to remember that, we need that multi-sensory experience. And of course, we want to interact with our students and have that connection as well. So video can be used in many ways, and I'll keep coming back to that during this session. But one of the key tools that I'm using right now, which is called Screencast-O-Matic, and I use it for all my videos because it's easy. As in teaching, we have so much to do. We want something that's going to be easy, that I don't have to play around with files and editing. This is just, it captures your screen, or it can just capture your webcam if you just want to talk to the webcam. And then it asks you when you're done, do you want to enhance this little bit? And then it says, where do you want me to put it? Do you want me to put it on YouTube? And it just does it for you. It's so seamless. And it's got a little writing tool, which I'll show you now. It goes like this. So I can change the color and give you a little heart there because I'm full of love today. And so it can change the thickness. So it's a fantastic, it kind of turns any PowerPoint slide and any video into a electronic whiteboard. So you can put up a PDF, video it, model the example on your screen, shoot it off to your students. So it's wonderful. I included Seesaw here because in the past when I've used Seesaw, I've used the video function a lot, and I like that it's built into the system, so you don't need to muck around with putting it on YouTube, for example. The only thing to remember is whenever you record something within a learning management system, it's in the learning management system. So if you wanted to then move it and put it on YouTube or something, that becomes trickier, if not impossible sometimes, as I've discovered in some of my own online teaching. But what I love is that Seesaw, you can just pop up there and with the click of a button say, hey guys, yesterday we did that writing task, really well done. I want everyone to go back and I want you to read it and I want you to pick out all of your verbs and I want you to see if you can replace those verbs with more interesting ones. Let's see how you go. And then you could model that. So it's really quick and easy. And then the students just as easily at the click of a button can record their work. So they can show you a piece of work and explain it, so that we can't physically do with everyone in our class in a real world environment. So you can actually hear them justifying their work, explaining their work. You can hear them in their oral presentation. So there's some really great functions in there. So if you're thinking about using Seesaw, I would definitely go for it because it's can redefine what's possible. The tool that I'm really excited about that I wanted to show you was Edpuzzle, because this is like your videos just going further, and you can take any video really off the internet, particularly off YouTube, and do stuff with it. What it allows you to do is to cut down videos. It allows you to, so if let's say you recorded a piece of instruction and then you wanted maybe just to take a little bit out of that for some students, you could do that, but it also has inbuilt quizzes and assessments. And it's going to be easier if I just show you. So I'm going to take you to the screen and demonstrate something for you. All right, so after I log in, this is kind of what it looks like. It's got other people's work, so it features some popular videos that are out there. My content is here. Now I can actually go to curriculum. So before I show you other things, this is just access to basically other people's work. So everything's publicly available. And this is what I absolutely love. And this is part of that redefining what we can do with technology, because suddenly we are networked in with the whole world. So whoever's created something, we now have access to it. So you can see lots and lots of maths videos in here, which is fantastic. You can sort by grade or subject. So that's very exciting. So if you see a video and it has these little tags, it means that that video has got integrated questions into it. So if you wanted to dabble in this and you're not ready to create your own, there's heaps. I mean, you can see how many, there's so many things that you can do, and you can go in and check what questions might be in there. So when you choose a video, you can see that along the time scale here, at these points, the video will pause and the questions will appear for the students. And over here, I'm just going to move myself, you can see that what the questions are going to be. So they're going to be multiple choice questions, open-ended questions. So you can copy this and put it in your own content and then share it with your students. So I think that's pretty amazing. If we go back, let's just say I use my content. So this is, I might use this guy here because he's pretty amazing. So this was a spelling video, and you can see along the bottom there's no questions integrated. So I actually needed this for a presentation, and I just cut the section that I wanted. But if I wanted to post this to my students with some questions, I'd press edit. And now what I can do is I can not only do we know, I can change the length of it, so I could cut it down even more. And then what I can do, this is really exciting. I can do a voiceover. So let's say, for example, there's those great Pixar animations that have no voice, so the characters don't speak. You could do something for, younger students or anyone really. You could do a voiceover at different sections over the recording, maybe asking questions, or you could demonstrate thinking from the perspective of a character, and then you could get your students to do the same thing potentially if they had access to Edpuzzle. But this is more of a teaching tool. But you could say, okay, in this video I'm going to talk from the perspective of this particular character, and I'm going to explain how I'm feeling. Or you could just ask questions. So you could demonstrate questioning as a comprehension technique, for example. Or you could demonstrate making connections during the voiceover. So that's a pretty cool function. The other thing that you can do is you can do these questions, and instead of a voiceover, you can do notes. So just like the voice, well, the voiceover is continuous, but let's say I'll just write this is a note, and then I save that. And you can see that it's appeared there, but I can move it to wherever I want it to be. And then at that point, the video will pause, my note will pop up. And the same with the questions. So I can add a multiple choice question. I can add an open-ended question, which is a fantastic tool to use. So I highly recommend having a go with this website. It's free. Then you can easily share. So I should just show you how you share something. So I've done my video, I've put in my questions, and then I press assign. Now, you can actually enroll students into here and you can collect the assessment data. So that's really cool. But if you just wanted to use this video somewhere else, you just wanted to email it or put it in Google Classroom, whatever you're using, you go to public link and you can either choose just to copy and paste this link, or you can actually embed it as well. So if you've got that function in what you're using, that means that the video will appear within the system so the children don't have to go to the link. So that's very cool. I really, really like this tool. I think that if you get creative with it, it can really transform your practice. So let's go back. All right, quite similar, I guess, to videos, but electronic whiteboards allow us to really capture and model and guide students through the learning process. So as I've already mentioned, you can use that same function just using Screencast-O-Matic, or you can do something like Explain Everything, which I've used quite a bit even with younger students. And just as an example, I've used this for maths, amongst other things, but maths we did, they all had access to their own little whiteboard on their iPads, and at the end of a unit, they had to demonstrate their understanding. So when we were using number lines to demonstrate addition and using jump strategy and split strategy, they created videos, and they were free to be quite creative as long as they could demonstrate to me their understanding based on what we had learned. So they can capture their voice. So they press record, and as they start drawing, the whole thing is recorded, and it's really intuitive and user-friendly. The children absolutely love it. So I've used it also to create instructional videos when I didn't want to be on the screen, when I wanted the focus to be on the writing. So that's really good. This web whiteboard, I think, is a great little tool that I've just come across. It is free again, and I can't see a recording function in it, but what you could do is you could screencast it, your screen, as you do it, and then use that as a video. But it has a functionality to share and collaborate, which I just wanted to show you very quickly. So this is what it looks like. It's very simple. So you just get your pen and you can write on here, you can type, you can put post-it notes there, which is great. You can change the color of them. Yep, so that's pretty easy. But this is what I really like. It's got some templates on here. So hopefully you can see those if I move myself. You can see that you can categorize. There's different brainstorming ones, matrices, scales. I mean, this is great for doing word sorts, for KWL charts, for sorting concepts. We've got lots of different ways of organizing information. I mean, even 6-hat thinking, that's really exciting. Then we've even got a Venn diagram. So any of these are fully editable, so you don't have to use them as they are. So if you had a more creative way of maybe using one of these graphic organizers, I mean, what a fantastic tool to have inbuilt. So you don't have to upload a PDF if you don't want to. It's all in there already. So I think that's very exciting. I'm just going to close that. And what you can also do is upload a PDF or an image or a PowerPoint if you wanted to annotate that. And here's the really great bit. So you can export it as a picture, which is fine, but you can actually add people to the whiteboard. So your option is you could add your class. So you could email them, send them this link, email them. So you could include their emails if they have one, or you could embed it as well if you wanted this whiteboard to appear in your learning management system. So you can either let everyone edit, so if you want it to be collaborative, you could just create something and then send it to the students, or you could get them to create something and then send it using this allow everyone to view. So you could do an instructional video just like this with Screencast-O-Matic to show the steps to the students. So that would be easy. And this is what I love too, is that you can create one of those templates. So you could have a Venn diagram, and then you can create a copy for each student really easily. You send it to them, and that way whatever they do on their board doesn't pop up on other people's boards. Or you could do group work. So if you wanted to have 4 students work on one board and 4 on another, you could send a copy, the same copy, to those particular students. So you do it this way. So you'd send one board to one group, for example. So That's pretty cool. And that's wonderful for collaboration. You could use it for them having to demonstrate their thinking. They could, collect a whole unit's work on here. It's, again, the possibilities are only limited by your imagination. So the tool is here. It's easy to share, easy to use, and it's free. So, go for it, I say. So I have another 2 tools that I wanted to show you, and I really am excited by these, and they're 2 completely different tools in their functionality. Quizlet, if you haven't used it, is essentially, in its simplest sense, a flashcard creating system, but it's not just flashcards. It is one of the most intuitive websites I've come across for vocabulary and for spelling, and then it's got a gamification element that is really easy to share. So I'm going to talk you through that one first. I'm not showing you the whole screen because sometimes little ads pop up on the side, but once you create the games, they don't pop up. But I just pressed create new, so I can just say, let's say this is my shapes card set, and we're learning all about 2D shapes. And I could put an annotated picture in here, but you can play around with that. What I wanted to show you is this. So I want to put in a term, right? And it says choose language. So I'll choose English, and then I say rectangle. Oops. Okay, so I can pick one of those. And then straight away over here, I'll just select English. It gives me a definition. Okay, so I'm sorry you can't see the whole definition, but you can just pick your definition there. And so it's really, really easy. So you just put in what you need, square, square, and then you pick a definition over there. So unfortunately, I just didn't want to flood you with advertising, but it is a really, really, really great tool. So I'm just going to put in one more word so I can show you what we can do with it after we've done all of that. So I'm going to create that set. Okay, so I choose to share it, but this is what it looks like essentially. So I've created my cards, and we can go through, I can click on them, it flips over for the definition, but this is the really great part. So it's got a learn option where they give you the definition, you have to pick the right word, there's a spell option, there's a test, and then there's these games. So the matching game is like, oh, I didn't do it correctly. Okay, so you just match them up like that, and you can set a timer and challenge the kids to time themselves. But what I love about it is that it's really easy to share. So once you've created your set, and there's sets on there that you can take that other people have created as well, you can share it. So you can copy this link really easily, but it goes even better. What you can do is you can actually go to these dots and you can embed. This would be my preference because it's the cleanest thing to do. So in a learning management system, embed, you can choose what it is that you want to embed. Do you want to embed the matching game? Do you want to embed flashcards, spell? So whichever one you choose, you can just copy that code and then put it in, and it will just appear in your system. So it's a really great one, wonderful for vocabulary, and it actually has a voice function as well. So in the spell, I'll show you how that works. So it says spell what you hear, and then they click on this
rectangle,
and then they can write it. So what a great way to do your spelling tests. So that's pretty exciting. So the other tool I wanted to show you was Vocaroo. I just came across this one a couple of days ago, and it's seemingly such a simple tool, but the possibilities are just endless because it's just voice recording. So if you don't have something like Seesaw, for example, or if a child only had access to a phone, perhaps while their siblings were using the iPad on the Seesaw, they could have a go at this. And what I love about it is it's just a website, it's browser-based, you don't have to download it, and you just record your voice. Okay, so we are now recording our voice on Vocaroo, and then you save and share, and it gives you these options. So here's what I was thinking. You could, if you're sending a worksheet, for example, to make it more inclusive and to ensure that the questions or the task is comprehended, you could actually read and explain the task and then embed this QR code. So you just copy and paste this as an image, put it in your worksheet before you send that off. You can embed it, or you can use the this web link, or you can download the file as well if you wanted to put it up somewhere. But I think the QR code function is fantastic because you could read them a little story, you could do a dictation, you could do a spelling test, and they then can do the same thing. So it's a really great way to do reading, for them to record their reading in a really simple way. So it's wonderful. It's just vocaroo.com, and this is all it is. So there's no messing about for the kids. It's really simple. So I would be using this tool a lot, and I'm really quite excited by it. Nearly there. Thanks for sticking with me. So assessment is obviously really important, and you've seen that I've mentioned assessment throughout. So I think it's really important to be very creative in our assessment. So how can we use voice recording? How can we use electronic whiteboards and videos? But we obviously want some more formalized assessment as well. So we could give children the option of using Screencast-O-Matic if that's what works for them. We have Vocaroo, we have Explain Everything, but Google Forms is a really fantastic way to collect data, particularly as a summative assessment, and it has inbuilt feedback as well, which is really important that the children can see where they went wrong, for example, before we even get back to them. So I'm just going to quickly show you one I prepared earlier. All right, so I know that the Microsoft Forms is quite similar in its design and function, so but this is the one that I've used quite a bit. So we can use Google Forms for anything really, but the assessment template they have is quite a good one. So here's just an example. I put in a video of a book, a storybook that was available on YouTube, and then I've followed up with some very simple comprehension questions. So these are obviously just sample ones. But you can see that you can do short answers. You can do, this one I included as an example for if you just wanted to check in with how people are feeling. But you can do like scale questions. So, you know, how did you like the book? So what would you rate this story, for example? So you would rate it as not very interesting to amazing, for example. Okay, so that would be the question there. And you have some different options. So you can make the questions compulsory. So you can say, yep, this is required. And you can also put an answer key in. And this is what I think is really great. So even with the short answer questions, you can put in possible answers. So you can put in what you think the students might respond. And here you have an option. And I think this one is important for our primary school students, because if they wrote something like they are going to WA and they did a spelling mistake, if we mark this box as mark all other answers incorrect, then it's going to mark it incorrect. So I would leave that one unmarked, and then you can provide your feedback in here. Okay, and your feedback can be in the form of a video, or you could do a link, so like a Vocaroo link. So that is pretty amazing that the child can do their test and receive feedback as well. Now, they don't receive feedback until they've completed the whole thing. And you can make questions compulsory or not, as I said. And when you go to create a question, you've got many different options here. So short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, etc., etc. And you can even do a file upload. So if they were doing an assignment and you wanted them to upload their work into here, you could do that as well. So I'll show you what it looks like. from their end. So this is the video that they watch, and they go through. It's got a red little star. They have to answer that question, and it goes through. I think I have to answer this one, otherwise it won't let me submit. So then I submit, and then I say view score, and it's going to give me my feedback. Okay. So I think that's a really great tool to be using for assessment. And what you get at the other end is the responses. So your data is automatically collected into there. So we love data, we love data collection. So that's a really fantastic tool for that. So it's great to have all of these tools, but we also need to put it all together. And whatever decision you have at your school level or at your area level will probably define that. Seesaw's free. Google Classroom is something that's widely used. And next video, I'm going to look at Padlet, because I think it's really important that we have a way that we show students the scope and the sequence of the learning, particularly in this online learning space. I mean, when they're turning up to school, there's just this kind of inherent trust from the students that they'll turn up, they'll do some learning, and the next day we'll do the next bit of learning. In this kind of environment, there's a different consideration, and it really is helpful for the students to see what the steps are going to be, and then they can self-pace and organize themselves, because we need to remember to be flexible. And I think the next video on Padlet is going to really excite you about the possibilities of this amazing free tool to organize your work, and it's a space where we can deliver the ideas and students can also respond. So I hope that you join me for that one. If you're a science teacher, perhaps Nearpod would really excite you, because there's some 3D simulations in there, and it's also a way of sequencing particular letters. I would probably leave it to the more tech savvy people. It's a little bit complex, but I included it there for those who are looking for something pretty cool and a nice challenge, and really something that is right up here with redefinition. It allows us to do things that we absolutely cannot do without technology. So, things that we need to ask ourselves. We really need to consider our principles of effective instruction. We need to keep going back to, what does good teaching look like? So good teaching is explicit, modeled, guided. It doesn't just leave it all up to guesswork. So how are we going to do that in the online space? What's available to me? What are my limitations? What are my possibilities? And how can I use the tools that I have in really new and interesting ways? How can I integrate all the tools as well? And, at the end of the day, how is this going to make my practice better? How can I shift what I've been doing into this new kind of landscape? So I really hope that you're going to have some rest time, have some downtime in the holidays, but have a play around with these tools and get excited by them. The possibilities are endless, and I know you'll do an amazing job, and I wish you all the best with playing around with these great free tools. All the best.